President, today marks 18 years to the day since President Clinton signed the Violence Against Women Act into law. And since that day, this law has protected countless women across the country, as seen most directly by the fact that annual rates of domestic violence have dropped by more than 60%. But Madam President, today also marks a far less celebratory day in the history of this critical bill. And that's because today is also the 139th day of delay by the House of Representatives since the Senate passed an inclusive bipartisan VAWA bill by a vote of 68 to 31. It marks 139 days since House Republicans decided not to follow suit and to instead pass a version of our legislation that stripped vital protections included in our Senate bill, provisions that protect some of the most at-risk women in our country. It has now been 139 days since 15 Senate Republicans stood up to join with us to pass this legislation because they knew the history of this bill. They knew that every time the Violence Against Women Act has been reauthorized, it has consistently included bipartisan provisions to expand protections to women who were not previously covered. They understand that domestic violence protections for all women shouldn't be a Democratic or Republican issue. So, Madam President, I hope that Speaker Boehner and our colleagues in the House hear this. We are not backing down, and we will keep fighting. 139 days is inexcusable. In fact, one day is inexcusable. It's now time, long past time, for Speaker Boehner to look beyond ideology and partisan politics. Their obstruction clearly is taking a toll on women across this country. In fact, for Native and immigrant women and LGBT individuals, every moment that our inclusive legislation to reauthorize VAWA is delayed is another moment that they are left without the resources and protection that they deserve. The numbers are staggering. One in three Native women will be raped in their lifetimes. 2 in 5 are victims of domestic violence, and Native women are killed at 10 times the rate of national average. Now, these shocking statistics aren't isolated to one group of women. 25 to 35% of women in the LGBT community experience domestic violence in their relationship. And 3 in 4 abused immigrant women never entered the process to obtain legal status, even though they were eligible, because their abuser husbands never filed the paperwork. Now, Madam President, while these numbers are frightening, what's even tougher is when you sit down face to face with women who are at risk of being left out of this bill. Over this last August recess, I held a number of roundtables in different corners of my state with women who'd been trapped in abusive relationships. Many of them are from the communities of women that the House Republicans refused to extend these provisions to. Through painful memories and many tears, they told me about how they feel all alone. Numerous women who were immigrants talked about how they were scared for themselves or their children, so they didn't report their husbands or boyfriends. Tribal women talked about how not only had they been abused, but how they then had to watch their abuser do the same thing to other women on their reservation with no recourse. Every moment the House continues to delay is another moment that these women and 30 million women like them are left without the protections they deserve. These statistics should make it perfectly clear to our colleagues in the other chamber that their current inaction has a real impact on the lives of women across America who are affected by violence. Where a person lives, their immigration status, who they love, should not determine whether or not the perpetrators of domestic violence are brought to justice. Madam President, these women cannot afford any further delay, not on this bill. We all know what it will take to move this bill forward. Leadership from Speaker Boehner. And Madam President, today the effort we started here in Senate in May, an effort that will continue as long as it takes, is a call for the very same thing, leadership. It's time for Speaker Boehner to look beyond ideology and partisan politics. It's time for him to look at the history of a bill that again and again has been supported and expanded by both Republicans and Democrats. For 18 years, this bill has expanded protection for vulnerable women. For the last 139 days, Speaker Boehner and those House Republicans have put this legacy at risk. It's time for them to do the right thing and pass the Senate's inclusive, bipartisan Violence Against Women Act. Madam President, Senator Leahy, who's chair of the Judicial Committee, will be here shortly. He has put tremendous effort in making sure that this bill is passed in a way that includes women across this country, and we owe him a debt of gratitude. All the members of the Judiciary Committee, some of them who will be here today over the next hour to talk about this. But again, we are here today to remind everyone there are women in this country who do not receive the protections of the domestic violence law that was passed. We are here to make sure that we're going to stand up for them and keep pushing till Speaker Boehner takes up this bill and passes it to protect women.